So we have just been an exercise where we've just been through an exercise where I have asked you to put yourselves in the shoes of the sales department or the sales function or the sales manager or sales director, of the finance director, the finance department, the medical director, the medical function. Yeah, and we've asked you to think about what are their strategies and what are their projects, what are some of the things that they're working on at the moment. So in the real world, this is what you do. You have a meeting arranged with one particular business person from one particular business function, and then you say to yourself, okay, what are my assumptions? What do I assume this person is going to be, what do I think they're going to have on their plate? Do you know the joke about making assumptions? I'm sure some of you will have seen this before. The general recommendation is you must never assume, because when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. Sometimes that's funny. But what we do is we make assumptions. So if you have a meeting with sales, you think to yourself, and you speak to your colleagues, and you say, what are they doing at the moment? Right? You say, what are the hot topics? What are the critical success factors? What's new off the press? What's the biggest problem that they have at the moment? What am I expecting when I walk into that room? What do I think they've got on their plate? Because you could just go in and ask all of these questions. You could just say, what is your strategy? What projects are you working on? And that's always a route for going into a conversation. And it's a legitimate route as well. But you could also go in and you could say, I've made some assumptions. I've come to some kind of conclusion about where you are and what you're trying to do. There are different ways of approaching that particular conversation. One way will get you a conversation. The other way will mean that you have to speak up front. In speaking, you will demonstrate credibility. You will demonstrate that you've done some homework. You will demonstrate your knowledge or your lack of knowledge. That's fine as well. You will demonstrate interest and intent. Yeah? And that's something which is important as a level of credibility for salespeople, specifically for sales, but for all functions as well. Okay? So we're going to go through them now and have a look. There's no correct answer, but I expect some of these things will be similar to other environments as well. Another final important point is the following. How different do you think the sales function is from Turkey to Colombia? How different do you think the finance department is in Germany or in Finland? Yeah? What about medical? From Costa Rica to America to Austria? What big differences are we going to find there? Obviously, we will find cultural differences. We will find differences to do with the local rules and compliance things. But apart from that, we're going to find more similarities than we are going to find differences, which means this process of putting yourself in somebody else's shoes and making assumptions about somebody's business situation is more or less going to be maybe not always 100% correct, but it'll be pretty close, as we'll see now. So we've made some assumptions now about 3 different functions. If you take these assumptions across different geographies, you're going to find a lot of similarities. Some people will say, yes, my sales department is facing some of the same problems and challenges. Some of them will say, well, no, we were focused on those, now we've got different things to worry about. There is a stereotype that suggests that sales is a short-term view. The reality is that all of the IT solutions that they're involved with are normally very long-term view related things. The whole CRM strategy at the moment and the change to different CRM platforms is a very, very long-term investment. So there is somebody thinking in terms of a 3, a 5, a 7, and even a 10-year plan. for all things related to customer relationship management and managing customer sets well. The master data topic is a very wide sweeping initiative which has been a long time in coming and is finally here with huge impact across the years for not just sales but a number of other departments as well. However, on a very top level, transparent level, we have things like interesting, sexy apps to do this, that or the other. We have iPad phenomena number 1, 2, 3. We have this and that and device here and device there. So, you know, stereotypically they'll always be painted as short-term perspective. Finance, when the IT project comes to finance, they spend a lot of money on it. Yeah, very, very important. Finance people love sexy tools. And when it comes to spending money on their own problems, they spend a lot of money on stuff which you would quite honestly look at and say, what's the return on investment on that? And they would say, no, we're different, we're finance, we need it. Yeah, but they're actually, you know, and the guys who produce, you know, financial analysis software, they know this. So the dashboard is really, really, you know, complicated and slick, and there's so much that you can do with it. But the reality is that sometimes they don't need this stuff at all, and they can be served by better things. But they like to wrap up their mysterious world in mysterious numbers, and therefore get very, very expensive solutions sometimes for themselves, and refuse to buy good stuff for anybody else, which is very annoying. But anyway, when finance has an IT project, then it normally is really quite big, quite complex, and broad sweeping. And they normally sit on top of ERP. And ERP is fundamental to most companies' business processes, which means you normally have a good affiliation potential with finance, because you find a lot of people who speak a common language. Yeah. However, getting meetings at the top can be challenging. Getting time investment from the people who matter can be challenging as well. And also, when you look at their strategies are very often reflections of the CEO's strategies, which means, is it really a financial strategy or not? Or is it just a reflection of the overall company strategy? Which means driving down into projects is critical at a financial level to make sure we're understanding what's going on and what's important for them. Yeah, and medical, yeah, I mean medical within this industry, research and development or product development, very much a long-term equation indeed. 7 years, 10 years, we're speaking very much about the future growth of the organization. So these guys need a lot of time. They have a lot of affiliation because they need to check everything that goes out in front of the market. So anything written, anything in text, anything that can be read or listened to or viewed needs to be checked by medical, by regulatory. So you will find a lot of people who you have good affiliation to on an IT level, but having the discussion on future plans with medical must, by its very nature, be a long-term discussion and something that is spread over a series of meetings rather than just one. Also, medical people themselves have sometimes got very difficult personalities. Yeah, you know, let's not forget that they've got big brains, and those big brains require a lot of ego stuff to go on. So we may need to speak with a number of different medical people and to get consensus going and respect and time in order to understand what their future looks like and where they need to go with it. Yeah? This is a reflection of one part of step one. I'll come to your question in a second. Okay.
I need 2 minutes
okay.
to open a meeting that I have I left my customer, my users with a provider.
Okay, great. And this is a rest day, by the way. He's going to just take 10 minutes to go and open the meeting.
My customers are the most important.
Okay. Cool. We'll cut that. We have to cut that piece out of the film now. Great.
Retake something? Or?
Yeah, we'll just redo the final. So that's fine. So just hit the button you'll hit anyway. So this flip chart represents the business view of step one. Okay. So for the finance person in step one, what do we do? What's one of our roles? Obviously, we need to know who they are as a person. They're called Fred. They play tennis. They've got 2 kids. They're responsible for 7 or 8 different people. They travel a lot. They're a workaholic. They're another holic as well. They love their business. They've been in the industry for 20 years, etc., etc., etc. Yeah? So this is also a part of step one. These are their friends. These are their affiliations. These are their networks. This is what they think of IT. Yeah? This is also a part of step one. As they're the finance director, we need a long-term relationship to them. Yeah? So we need to think in terms of how do we cover this function? Do we need to speak to the finance director? Maybe not. Maybe, it's fine if the IT director speaks to the finance director once every 3 months in the meetings that they have, and we cover their people. We cover the people that work with them and the people underneath them. So we view it as a person, but most importantly, we view it as a function. Because if the finance director leaves, and this happens from time to time, they leave. All of a sudden, they get headhunted into a different job, and the next day, you have a different finance director. Yeah? Now, the tables turn, and it's your job to teach them about what's going on in their organization as it relates to you, and not the other way around. And this is where the principle comes. It's your duty, organizational duty, to understand the IT needs of the finance entity. Yeah? So that if there are changes within the organization, then you can take those messages back in and pick up from where you had started. And the same applies to all of the different functions in the organization. Yeah? So in a nutshell, this is the first stage, understanding. We haven't yet started speaking about products. We haven't started creating ideas at this stage. We haven't started drilling into what are the key problems that you're facing, what are the consequences of those problems. We haven't started saying, would you like to see a reference for something that we did in a different country? We haven't started saying, have you got a budget? Yeah, all of those questions can come later. But the important questions we have begun to address by trying to understand their business. Okay?